Mine's
button. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments for Thursday, September 19th, 2019. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Director Williams? Hart? Okay. Hartman? Adam?
Here.
Lavanino? Waite? Rubalcaba? Mosby? Perotti?
Here.
Clark? Murillo?
Here.
Sierra?
Here.
And Chair Patino.
Here. Could you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, first order of business is the consent calendar, is public comment.
Madam Chair, we have one public comment speaker, Mr. Scott Wentz.
Good morning, Mr. Wins.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Scott Wins representing Cars Are Basic. As you know, we've been highly critical of the alternative transportation planning having to do with bicycles and walking because it hasn't worked. Hasn't worked in Southern California, hasn't worked in South County. The city of Goleta had a bicycle count that we did, that they agreed to when they were first formed, of 65 people from 7 to 9 in the morning on Hollister Avenue. That's rush hour. Those are bicyclists. We just did a recent bike count. We had 23. That'll show you the amount of decline. The city of Santa Barbara stopped doing its bicycle counts because they couldn't confirm enough bicycle riders to support their claims for bicycle use. The city of Santa Barbara and the city of Goleta have been requested to implement new rules having to do with the e-bikes. These should be considered to be vehicles, not bicycles. I was just up on State Street the other day going to 25 miles an hour and there was a bike right next to me. There was a report out of LA with a television station where one of the promoters of the e-bikes were saying, hey, this is wonderful, we can do 60 miles an hour going downhill. That's a vehicle. They should be paying their fair share on the road. They should not be allowed to be in bicycle paths. And if they can't travel in on the roadways without obstructing traffic, they should be pulled over and ticketed. This situation is changing dramatically. And you have to get on top of it, because if you don't, somebody's going to come back sooner or later and say, well, you folks, meaning SBCAG, funded the city of Santa Barbara, the city of Carpinteria, the city of Goleta, and now you're responsible for my accident. See, when you're pulling out of a driveway or you're changing lanes, you expect to see a bicyclist doing between 10 and 12 miles an hour. That's what a pedal bicyclist generally does unless he's on a high-speed bike. You don't expect to have somebody doing that to you. And I almost ran over a bicyclist on Santa Barbara Street the other day who was going up the street at 25 miles an hour. I saw him in my rear view mirror figuring it was a bicyclist. I changed lanes and almost sideswiped him as he came up alongside of me. You have to do something here, folks, because you're being asked to fund this. And if you fund these alternative transportation modes that are dangerous for the people on the streets, you're going to be held ultimately responsible.
Thank you. Ms. Contreras, do we have any any further public comment in Santa Maria?
No more public comment.
And Mr. Doss and Ms. Waite have just joined us. Okay. Okay, consent calendar. Are there any directors that would like anything pulled from the consent items? Mr. Lavanino?
4C.
Okay.
I? Could I have I, please?
Aye. Okay.
Oh, never mind. Withdraw. Never mind.
Okay. For I, could you read that, Ms. Contreras?
And Chair Patino, we have some public comment for that item as well.
Okay.
4I, Olive Mill Project and San Ysidro Project. 4I1, adopt Resolution 1935, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 overall work program and budget Amendment 2 to reflect the usage of Regional Surface Transportation Program Highway 101 reserve funds for the Olive Mill and San Ysidro intersection improvement projects. And 4I2, approve and authorize the Executive Director, Margie Kern, to execute these amendments to the OWP and budget. And I3, after adoption of Resolution 1395, approve and authorize the Chair to execute a memorandum of understanding with the City of Santa Barbara and the County of Santa Barbara to continue work and add new work for the environmental preliminary geometric design and coastal permitting phases of the Olive Mill Roundabout Project and the San Ysidro Roundabout projects with a total amount not to exceed $708,399 for the period of performance from the date executed through December 31st, 2020. And I4, approve and authorize the Executive Director, Margie Kern, to make administrative adjustments to individual project budgets such that the total budget is not to exceed pursuant to MOU 2019, Section 5.F, and to make administrative amendments in accordance with MOU 2019, Section 28.
Thank you. Director Sierra?
Thank you very much. My concern is, after reading it and then looking at all the letters that have come in from residents, this roundabout, before we move any farther, I know Caltrans has put a lot of studies into this, but I really would like to hear why so many residents are unhappy with this proposal.
Thank you. And we have public comment on this?
Yes, we have 5 members of the public who would like to speak.
Okay.
First to speak is Jeff Schwashberg, followed by Jürgen Bohr.
I don't think I need the microphone.
Yes.
I do?
Yes.
All right. Good morning, and thank you. Nobody likes traffic. I mean, I think we can assume that. I can't think of one useful thing about traffic. Traffic disrupts our lives. This project, the roundabouts, I can only speak about the one at San Ysidro because I live near there, and after 31 years, I've got a pretty good feel for the traffic patterns, what's going on, the nature of the community. My biggest objection to this plan is that it doesn't fit the nature of the community. Do studies, measure traffic, have engineers devise plans, but how does it actually fit into the community? What if it was a marijuana shop going across from a school? That wouldn't be allowed, wouldn't fit. Would not fit. This project does not fit. I'm sure there are projects within the county and the different cities within the county that can use the funds a lot better than a big disruptive dig in our area that will disturb us for an extended period of time, that will shower us with even more ambient light. It would just be a disaster. And then what's the reward at the end of that tunnel? Then it's the third lane construction being done. Now we are in the last, when I say we, I'm talking about Montecito and especially that San Ysidro exit. We're the last part of this project, the very last part. So what would happen? If I understand it correctly, the part before us would already be completed. The part after us is already completed. So if that's the case, how much of a traffic impact could it have if you occasionally had to close one lane of the 2 lanes that exist in that last part of the project? How bad could it be? Because the alternative is that the people will come through the neighborhood and it just doesn't really fit. But more importantly, and this issue has been brought up again and again and again, is the safety of having a roundabout at that intersection with that concentration of people who would otherwise be walled off from the beach because it would be so difficult to carry your surfboard, your stroller, your kids, all of that stuff. It's just not safe. I'm a cyclist. I'm over 40,000 miles in the last 7 years. I've seen every situation. I've had my falls. I haven't had a car to bicyclist accident. I don't intend to, because I assume that everyone's trying to kill me, and I keep my eyes wide open and I wait until I have eye contact. I don't see people having eye contact at a roundabout. They're looking once to their left if they know what they're doing, and then they go. They're not really making eye contact with cyclists, pedestrians, or other vehicles. And the cars and the way people drive cars it's never going to change. It's an aggressive mentality. I've got to get through. I say, let them slow down. Big deal. Wait until that last phase is ready to go, ready to shovel, and we don't need the roundabout before that.
Thank
It's just
you very
going to
much
cause
for
more
your
problems.
comments.
Thank you for the time.
Good morning. My name is Jürgen Bohr. I'm a 50-year resident at San Isidro Road. I would like to make a few comments about item 4I on the consent calendar, primarily the San Isidro roundabout. You will be voting here to spend another $700,000 plus to continue working on the plans for the Olive Mill and the San Isidro roundabouts. Where the present plans for this Olive Mill roundabout leave a lot to be desired, the present plans for the San Isidro roundabout should be totally scrapped and eliminated. Please put the brakes on that project. The San Isidro North Jameson intersection is safe. Only 5 accidents have happened in the past 5 years per the CHP. Stop signs work. The increase in traffic twice a day could be handled easily and cheaper through a flagman, a part-time flagman, or staggering dismissal times at the school during the school year. The planned configuration of the roundabout is a safety hazard for pedestrians, cyclists, handicapped, the elderly, and children who want to use the safe routes to school pathway. This roundabout, with its oval shape, has 9 separate marked crossings. Which kid would not like to take shortcuts? Most of all, it violates the Montecito Community Plan. And to be blunt, the adjacent community just does not want it, as you just heard. The community has hardly had any input in these decisions. This vote today is another example. Community involvement, if there is any, is usually a joke. County and city planners and engineers are funded and plan and work on these things full time. Regular people don't have that time. There are a few public hearings once in a while, and then the planners go back to their offices and continue to work and plan. As long as you feed the machine that is funded, it will continue to plan. They will continue to plan and work and plan and work and grind out whatever new schemes and unwanted schemes and schemes that nobody wants. Please put a brake on that project. A final option would be make the southbound on-ramp that you took away at Cabrillo a priority. And wait with all the roundabout stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Scott Wentz, followed by Denise Adams and Shelley Badat.
Madam Chair, before I start, I would ask an extra 2 minutes because I'd like to discuss the Olive Mill roundabout and the San Ysidro roundabout as separate issues. They are both complex. It's up to you.
You may go ahead.
Thank you. Scott Wins representing Cars Are Basic. First, I'm going to address the Olive Mill Roundabout. The Olive Mill Roundabout is, in military terms, a FUBAR waiting to happen. You have a situation where the Caltrans and the City of Santa Barbara Transportation staff has agreed with it that once the southbound on-ramp is put back at Cabrillo Boulevard, you'll lose 65% of the transportation that's on that road. Well, if you're going to remove 65% of the cars that are on that road, then you have no issue. The City of Santa Barbara, through Public Works, has given us the information that they have approximately 1/4 of an accident every 6 months. 1/4 of an accident every 6 months. People say, well, it's an unusual intersection and we have to do something about it. Why? It works. The City of Santa Barbara allowed the taking out of a gas station that added more car trips there. It's now residential. The car trips have been reduced. You put in a roundabout at this location, you have an issue going on with the debris flow. People say, oh, well, actually it'll be a protection for the businesses. No, it won't. What it will do is it will divert that debris flow, because it will happen once again. And it will come down Olive Mill, and it will cause a disaster, and it'll go right into the businesses around there. And if you put a piece of junk in there with cement, how are you going to get in and clean it out? One of the reasons Caltrans and the other emergency people were able to clean out that area is because they were able to get emergency vehicles in there. That is a bad plan at the wrong location, and the statistics don't support it. And I'd just like to add, we have a qualified traffic engineer who has over 25 years. He's been on our board now for over 15 years, and he thinks this is a stupid plan. I will transfer over to the San Ysidro Jameson Lane roundabout. We have requested from the city, the county sheriff's department and the county fire department to object to this roundabout based upon emergency transportation. We have friends that were involved in the fight of the Thomas Fire. We had friends that were involved in the debris flow. There were emergency vehicles streaming up San Ysidro. I mean, there was sometimes 10 or 15 red lights going up that street. How are they supposed to get through with this design? This is first off, as the gentleman said before, it's a bad design. It's a plug, it's not a roundabout. That's number one. Number two, if you remember what we said off and on for the last 15 years, the state of Massachusetts has taken out roundabouts of this size because they are not pedestrian, bicycle, or ADA compatible. So this keeps going on. It just keeps, it has its own rolling down the hill type of thing. The governor of the state of California just came down and had a big affair down at the Rosewood. All sorts of vehicles in there and everything else. There wasn't any backup. So if there isn't any backup now, then what's going to happen when you widen the freeway and the traffic flows easier? You're going to have fewer people wanting to get off the freeway because they won't have to cut around. I have heard repeatedly, the letters that you've received, Madam Chair, are just a fraction of what this organization gets. We get phone calls, we get letters. How can we stop this? This is bad planning. It interferes with emergency transportation. It is not ADA compliant. It is not bicycle friendly. It's not pedestrian friendly. Please stop it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Denise Spengler Adams. I know 5 of you and don't know the other 5. Glad to meet you. I've been a resident of the Montecito area for 39 years, and in February 1st, it'll be 40 years. I'm here today to ask you not to fix what's not broken and to fix what is broken. The southbound lane at Cabrillo needs to be reopened. It's a logger jam. It's a problem. I live up by the West Montecito, closer to Westmont College and to Cold Spring School. We heavily rely on the city for most of our services because we access things through Milpas, Salina Street, and through the Hot Springs Road area, which is city property. And then if we go through Sycamore Canyon Road, we access through Olive Mill. The problems that have occurred for us have all started when they closed the southbound Cabrillo on-ramp. And since you did the initial traffic studies, everything has changed. We've had a debris flow, we've had a fire, we've had reduced enrollment in both of our elementary schools, Cold Spring as well as Montecito Union. So I'd like to suggest that instead of spending $708,000 to move forward on this project, that now that the Montecito Country Club is reopened, as well as the Miramar Hotel, and we've had the debris flow, that you take some of that money and spend it on a revised, updated traffic study, circulation patterns, coordinate with the city of Santa Barbara, because that Coast Village Road area going on down to San Ysidro is all impacted. Much has changed since you did your initial work. The second point I would like to make is that the character of the community, these roundabouts just don't work. People that live here have no idea how they work. I can attest to that. I have 3 cars, 2 belong to my children, and both of them have the front and the backs dented because people don't understand the difference between a roundabout and a traffic circle. Many tourists stop and they don't keep going. So you're looking over your shoulder to get on. They're stopped because they think it's a traffic circle and not a roundabout. As a past speaker said, that issue came up in Boston and they're trying to take care of it. The safety issue of pedestrians, bicyclists, and walkers. I see parents get out on the Salinas roundabout that have children at Cleveland and Franklin School to stop traffic because it's impossible to cross at a roundabout. So for many reasons, I would like you to pull it, take the money, look at your traffic study, talk to the community. We were never noticed initially. My last point that I wanted to ask you to think about is spending that amount of money when nobody wants it. It's a lot of tax money, and our revenues are down in the county. So if we're going to spend money, please spend it on what would help the community.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams.
Thank you.
Shelley Bedard, a resident of Montecito. I think I'm just going to devote my conversation to the aesthetics and the impact in terms of concrete and lighting that this is going to bring. I walk out of my house and I can see the Miramar, Rosewood Miramar Hotel. Oh, it's the light. They have the lights on all night long, whether people are in the rooms or not. There's an entire bank of lights. Plus, they put in along Jameson, along the hotel, a whole bank of street lights. So there's about 10 lights that are also on all night long. So now we're looking at a roundabout, which I'm sure will have, well, we have 2 lights there now at our intersection. I'm sure there's going to be at least 10 lights around this roundabout. I've counted them around the other roundabouts. I know there's certain parameters that they have to abide by in terms of lighting and signage. So there's going to be signage and lighting. And this is, we were not talking about this, but I'm going to mention it, the Sheffield Interchange, which is going to be a humongous project as well. So we've got a little space, Sheffield and San Ysidro, and we have a gigantic Miramar Hotel, a gigantic roundabout, because it's not small, and then the Sheffield Interchange. So we're talking about an area of 1 block that's going to contain a massive amount of lighting, a massive amount of concrete, and it's just going to change the entire character of the neighborhood, of the entrance to Montecito. So, I mean, I think money can be spent in other ways. I agree with whatever everybody has said prior to me, and I hope that you take all this into serious consideration and look at the big picture, which is, you know, what do we want to be looking at from years to come? More concrete or more foliage and more, you know, more of what a community should look like? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have one final public comment, Miss Mimi Wills.
Hello, I'm Mimi Wills, and I live directly on the corner of San Ysidro and Jameson. Most of everything that I wanted to say has been touched, except for a few things. One is well, I know everyone has brought up safety, but safety for visually impaired people like myself. I am almost legally blind. I had to give up my license this year, and my vision, I will be legally blind most likely within the next 6 months. For roundabouts, even the best designed roundabouts are not safe for people visually impaired. They're not safe for children. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration, they do not recommend roundabouts in areas with a lot of pedestrians, with a lot of people walking. They don't support that, and that's what happens on that corner. That's our gateway that's our entrance to the beach. Everyone from our side of the freeway, everyone parks on our side on our street, everyone walks. I walk my children to school, all 3 of them. I can't drive anymore. That's my only way of getting anywhere is walking. If there's a roundabout, there's no way I will feel comfortable walking. The shape of the roundabout also is completely, they consider the oval roundabouts not safe for areas like ours. Roundabouts do increase accidents. They just reduce usually deadly accidents for completely different type of intersections. So I feel that all the things that are being pushed for the roundabout don't fit our intersection and aren't appropriate. And I hope you guys consider the safety a huge, huge, huge issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wills.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
was that
Director
the,
Murillo?
Ms. Clerk, is that the final speaker on that?
Yes, that's the final speaker.
Thank you. I appreciate Mayor Sierra bringing up the topic. I appreciate people coming and expressing their concerns. I know that for the Olive Mill intersection, our transportation planners and traffic engineers have done extensive analysis. I'd like to ask Ms. Kern or Mr. Luna if they can weigh in on the extensive work on these projects, the years of analysis, and perhaps the public participation aspect. With all due respect to everyone, I'm hoping that my colleagues will put this matter forward. We really support these projects going forward at the City of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luna?
Yes, Madam Chair and Director Murillo. There's a few issues that you've asked me to address. As far as the studies that have been done to support the roundabouts at that location. So as part of the revised EIR that Caltrans did for the 101 project, these are intersections that need to be mitigated for future traffic operations. So a solution is needed at these locations. This board has supported the studies to date to at least identify the work to date. Both the city and the county have completed a detailed traffic analysis called an intersection control evaluation that indicates that the only workable solutions for that future traffic is a roundabout at each location. Signals won't work for any time period up to that point where future traffic is needed in the 2040 year. To date, the projects are both going through design review through the city, respective committees at the city and the county. So there's been a number of opportunities for the public to weigh in at those boards where project approval will be granted, not by SBCAG, but by the city and the county to allow those two projects to move forward, since the city and the county, respectively, for Olive Mill and San Isidro are the lead agencies for those projects.
Thank you. Director Hartman?
Thank you. Could you comment on the safety for all users, particularly cyclists and pedestrians and people who have other kinds of disabilities, and also the round versus the oval roundabout?
I'm not prepared to comment on the safety aspects related to how they affect the visually impaired. Though as far as ADA compatible for other types of features, they're fully been designed to address those types of uses and access across and through the roundabout. As to the last question was related to, can you remind me again, Director Hartman?
Well, so long we've built roads for cars, and
Yeah.
increasingly we really need to build roads for pedestrians and cyclists and scooters and other things. Much too valuable real estate to be left to cars alone. So how does the roundabout affect the safety of those other users?
I can partially answer that, which is that the design that county staff have brought forward on the San Ysidro roundabout substantially reduces the space of roadway a pedestrian or bicyclist has to cross. So safety is a function of how much roadway they have to go through where they could be hit by a car. And in this case, it shortens that amount because there is refugia in the design, and it's a balance. You know, you want that far enough away from the curve to improve pedestrian and bicyclist access, but you don't want it so far away that people, as one of the speakers mentions, attempts to cross outside of the crosswalk. County staff will have to work, and Caltrans will have to work extensively with the Montecito Planning Commission, which the county has given jurisdiction on this matter, particularly the question of we are pushing the issue, as one speaker mentioned, Ms. Badat, of lighting with Caltrans, and Caltrans has offered to model and work with the county in it. The charge of not working with the community is interesting just from the perspective of people who were involved in the Montecito Association's Transportation Committee when this idea was started. It was started as a Montecito Association Transportation Committee suggestion to the county and to Caltrans as part of the mitigation for the 101 project. And so it actually started as a community initiative. Now, the people on the committee has changed, and that's an issue. The project, as mentioned by some of the speakers, is wildly unpopular in the hedgerow. But in other neighborhoods that are now increasingly the focus of cut-throughs, those cut-throughs of traffic will continue unless traffic at these intersections are addressed. And I don't think anybody can go out, particularly in the PM peak on Coast Village or on North Jameson, and say there's not a queuing problem. People in the Montecito Oaks can hardly leave their neighborhood from the south because of how much traffic there is queued up on many days. So this is not an easy matter. For the past couple years, I've attempted to try to work with the schools on the corridor and other means to try to reduce the traffic counts. I don't think rerunning the numbers with current traffic counts is a bad idea. That, as one speaker mentioned, that's probably a good idea. But we do not yet have evidence that the projects are not needed. And particularly, I would argue against, if we're going to have the hassle of the project, we don't want to wait till after the 101 construction to mitigate the construction and existence of the 101 project. And the weird thing is that Olive Mill one is very popular in the community at large, but if you only build the Olive Mill one, then you're going to shove more people in the PM peak into the San Ysidro intersection, further weakening the San Ysidro intersection. So this is not I don't feel by any stretch of the imagination this is a no-brainer, but I put out to the community that either we got to reduce traffic counts somehow, or we got to have a project, because otherwise the ramifications are significant and include queuing onto the freeway, which is not something that we want to have as part of the 101 expansion project.
Director Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for Mr. Luna. Mr. Luna, I'm curious about what assumptions drive the 2040 projection and the date of that data those assumptions come from. And the reason why I bring this up is that you may recall, Mr. Luna, I challenged the assumptions used in the Linden Casitas project, and it turned out that was based on very old data, old planning, and that we were able to reduce the size of the Linden overcrossing by 2 lanes and the Linden overcrossing by 1 lane by updating those the assumptions for the projected traffic. Thank you.
Through the chair, Director Clark.
Yes, Mr.
So
Luna.
the assumptions that were used in the intersection control evaluation analysis that was done, and then in Caltrans's revised EIR, were based on projections that were reevaluated after Caltrans got challenged in 2014, and then they revisited the intersections, and they found that based on projected growth that was supported by SBCAG's regional travel model in the area, which makes some assumptions that maybe Mike can speak to as to how they interpret or inform from the local agencies' general plan build-outs and so on and so forth. All that traffic growth was used to evaluate the traffic in 2040, and that was used as the basis for the evaluation, and then the projected deficiencies at that location, which, as this board knows, was the center point for one of the legal suits that Caltrans faced on that project.
Director Parati.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment. I know that Goleta, having put in our first roundabout, came with a lot of concerns from the neighbors and the community at large. The one thing that seems to be working really well, we did really an extensive outreach, and we moved the outreach to all different areas so that we could actually, people that weren't real comfortable with how a roundabout works, we showed them diagrams of how it would actually work. But we also put in a path that that bicyclists could use if they didn't feel like taking the lane, that they would use the path. And also there was a pedestrian path. So you had, for bicyclists, they had an option. So I always have had concerns. We're talking about doing a couple more roundabouts by the 217, and they're larger. They're 2 lanes instead of 1 lane. At Los Caneros, it's 1 lane and very wide, so it seems to work very well. But the 217, I have heard concerns about visually impaired and people with other disabilities getting across. So, that's something to really, that I will be looking into when we start talking about that roundabout on 217. But
Director Rubalcaba.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gina Rubalcaba, Mayor Pro Tem with the City of Guadalupe. So I'm furthest north from you all. I hear your concerns, and so I do want to ask Caltrans, in your study, did you reach out to residents around the area? Because the one thing that I notice is that with these studies is the people who know the areas the best are the ones that live in those areas. And I'm wondering if you had any reached out to the residents, if you had any workshops, if the residents were able to express anything regarding their concerns, because it really does sound that the San Ysidro roundabout is of great concern. So I would like to know if any of that has happened.
Through the chair, I would just like to say that as as Mr. Luna responded, this is part of mitigation of the EIR, which included extensive public involvement. And then this project being delivered now is in the project approval process. So he might be able to shed more light on the subsequent engagement of the public on this.
And so SBCAG, just following up on Ms. Lowe's comments, SBCAG's role has been as project sponsor through this project development phase. We have been involved in the project development team meetings with the city and the county. I think it was up around 2 years ago. There was a widely publicized and well-attended public meeting down on the beach, waterfront, to address the kickoff, essentially, of both of these projects through the study phase. And now, after some of the technical analysis has been done by the project teams at each of the agencies, they've embarked on the Board of Architectural Review. They have for the Olive Mill, they have a joint task force that includes representatives from the city and the county, because it's involved in both jurisdictions, and then the county is about to start their process. Ultimately, they both need to go to the planning commissions at each of those agencies for approval, as I mentioned before. There is an effort, and some of the funds in the staff report are for additional public outreach that can occur at this point in time to meet with people and continue that public involvement up to early next year, when we anticipate project approval, or at least the city and the county anticipate project approval.
I would hope that would happen, because as an elected official, to me, it is very important to hear the voices of the residents and the people who live in the areas and know their hometown the best, and how people drive the roads and the roads are being used. So those that are here, please make sure that you continue to stay involved in those meetings and such.
Director Sierra.
Thank you very much, Chair. What I'm hearing is that although there is traffic in the evening, getting home from work, getting to work, that at the present time there is not a huge traffic issue at either of these locations. That's what Mr. Luna said. He's looking for solutions for future.
That's not what Mr. Luna said.
I thought you said future traffic 20 to 40 years out. Did I misunderstand that?
I think what I attempted to say, Director Sierra, is that the mitigation's based on that future traffic, though I think if you talk to a number of folks and staff at each of the agencies, there's a need to address at least peak hour issues right now at both locations.
Okay, thank you. I just think right now, if we could find a way to work on the peak traffic issues, continue the 101 project, and spend the money on other, I think, more critical projects that are long-term, like our Robinson Bridge. If we're looking at mitigation, I just think maybe 10 years from now, something better would come up that the entire community would support. So I'm kind of trying to listen to what I've seen here, the 8 letters that were sent in, the speakers that were here. I know that Caltrans and city and county have spent a lot of time and effort, and so have you. Thank you.
Director Murillo, did you have your light on?
I was going to ask if I should make a motion
Okay, I have
separately.
Director Lavanino, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, fine.
Yes, please.
I'll wait.
So I think it'd be helpful to go back and put this thing into perspective of where we are in the timeline, of how this interrelates with the overall widening of the 101. I think we have a bunch of newer members. We've been talking about this for 6 years, 10 years. Well, we've been talking about it for 30 years. Only been doing something about it. Because if you remember, Measure A was dependent on widening the 101. And we're finally doing that. And I think it would be helpful to kind of put this in historical perspective of these are mitigation projects that, because we're doing the 101, we're being required to do these by Caltrans. So I think it'd be helpful just to kind of give a 2-minute Wayback Machine. Let's go into the time machine and kind of how we got here.
Through the chair, Director Lavanino, so you borrowed my phrase. The Wayback Machine goes to, I'll just start in 2014 when this board made a decision to have staff continue to support the city and the county on what they called parallel projects at the time, which included all of Mill San Isidro and Cabrillo.
Okay, just a little sidelight to that too. So if we did not support the city's proposals for additional projects because of mitigating the 101, there was the possibility that that project would get held up for a considerable amount of time.
That is correct. At that point in 2014, as Director Lavanino accurately remembers, we were at a juncture of, do we move forward with certifying the environmental document? So that was one of the decisions that this board made to direct Caltrans to move forward to finalize the EIR at that time on the 101 HOV that ultimately got challenged, but it was necessary to even take that first step to certify it. That was done later in the year in September, I believe, in 2014. It allowed us to move forward on the design. This board was supportive to allow Caltrans and SBCAG to move forward in the design, which made the project more ready for construction. And then the opportunity for SB1 funding came a couple years later. And we were ready and competitive for that in 2017.
And how much did we get?
And we got $184 million for the first 3 segments of that, which allows us to now be more competitive in segments 4D and 4E, which are the remaining 2 segments. We were undertaking those environmental challenges at the same time with Caltrans through 2017, but they have been resolved. So that's the context of how it fits in with the 101. Subsequently, in the revised EIR, at the time we were supporting city and county staff, but now they're required improvements because the analysis showed that improvements at those 2 locations were necessary as a result of the findings in the revised EIR that Caltrans did in 2017.
Last comment or question. So if at some point we decided, hey, we don't want to do these anymore, they're part of the required findings for the revised EIR, what would happen?
Through the chair, Director Lavanino, that's a tough question to come up with a quick answer to, but what I would say in general is if we did not fulfill certain mitigation requirements, that we may have to reopen the EIR to identify a different mitigation strategy.
Which would put a lot of future funding in jeopardy.
Could put funding at risk.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Adam?
Well, I hear everybody, and you know, I agree. We're putting money in the wrong spot. I get it, but we've already done so much. I mean, we've already wasted so much time and money on this. It's ridiculous, and I think you just got to go through with it because it isn't going to get any better. And you know, Ms. Sierra said in 10 years somebody will come up with a new idea. Good luck with that. I mean, physics is still going to be physics. Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to come up with a DeLorean that floats off and flies. You know, so you know, somebody already tried that somewhere. So you know, I just think you gotta move on. It's part of a much larger project, and you know, I took some heat from some people a few years ago when I voted, what was it, 11-2 with your predecessor because there was a failure to plan the outlying stuff, and I didn't like that. I thought that was and when I say outlying stuff, maybe that's a bad characterization. The attachments to the reality off the freeway, and yeah, I don't think we can do that. We shouldn't do that. And this is part of planning the attachments to the freeway. So you know, you gotta go. You gotta just do it.
Okay, Director Sierra?
I'm really hoping that notes are being taken. The concerns that I'm hearing are bike pedestrian safety, lighting, and concrete, and that hopefully if this goes in, that those will be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Director Waite?
Yes, hi. I'm Karen Waite, City of Solvang. I only wish that I had been a director on this committee a number of years ago when this whole concept came into being. Although I am up in North County, I have extensive experience having practically raised my children on San Leandro Lane in Montecito. So I'm very, very familiar with both of the intersections involved here. I do feel that when it comes to the roundabouts, the cart is being put before the horse. I understand there's been an awful lot of work, money spent on studies. However, realistically, if you look at the San Ysidro-Jameson intersection, I can see no feasible way that you could put a roundabout at that intersection for safety reasons. That is an intersection that comes right off the freeway, also comes from a road that is being used as a bypass, where again, maybe down the road for years after the 101 project is finished, that traffic may be significantly reduced. I don't know. This is changing demographics, increased population, it may or may not. However, at a roundabout, you would need much more space. I cannot even fathom having to walk down San Ysidro Road, cross through over that bridge, heading towards the beach with the roundabout. There's, for visual reasons, biking reasons, pedestrian reasons, I cannot see how that can possibly work. It's just not an area that I would see as appropriate for that. However, Olive Mill Road, that has been a problem for years. I remember just, you taking your chance, shooting through. Is this guy going to go? This woman going to go? That's an area where, again, perhaps a roundabout might work. But let me go back to the San Ysidro Jameson intersection. That's an area that would be very conducive to crosswalks, light up crosswalks, signage, rather than a roundabout, especially for the access of emergency equipment going up and down San Leandro, San Ysidro, those main avenues getting onto the freeway. So my input on this is that I really think that the 101 project should be complete before anything is done with those particular intersections. At a very minimum, work on your crosswalks, your signage. People don't know the rules when you come to four-way stops. They don't know. You yield to the right person on the right or whoever gets there first. They don't know that. I don't know if signage would help in the interim in a situation like that at both intersections. I'm just asking to look into that before we proceed with roundabouts in areas where it might not be appropriate.
Okay, Director Williams?
Well, I just wanted to, I don't think anybody ever completely answered Al's question, which is in my mind, you do not need to use future projections to realize that those intersections have a problem now. And that unless you think traffic is going to go down during the freeway construction and afterwards, then you have an even bigger problem. Coast Village Road is being strangled by traffic more than 3 hours a day, and that means a significant commercial district of the city and a significant community district for Montecito is being strangled, so something is needed to be done to do that. The one, I don't see a viable alternative to a roundabout at Olive Mill. The only viable alternative to a roundabout at North Jameson that I see after a couple years of trying to get traffic reductions from the school sources. The real viable one that I would see is a traffic cop. The question is, who would pay for that for the entire mitigation period? And so, I'll put it out again. If there's an entity that's willing to do that, then there's another route here. But I don't yet have that ability to choose between those alternatives.
Thank you. Director Clark, did you have your light on?
Yes, I did.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Director Williams, I'm not challenging that we do nothing. I'm not challenging that there's anything here. I'm just telling you the history in the city of Carpinteria, where the assumptions for the size of the improvements that were made were actually based on a draft EIR that had high growth projections. I don't know why the city selected that draft, because that same EIR was rejected by the Coastal Commission, which did not allow for that future growth. Yet that was given to SBCAG to make the projections for the size of the improvements that were proposed. By going back and looking at what was really going to happen, what was the real planning document, we were able to reduce the size of what was needed. That's all.
Thank you. Director Murillo?
Thank you. You were talking about Carpinteria at the, okay, got it, thank you. I found in my notes that the Coast Village Business Association is supportive of these projects. So I hope that's persuasive for any of you that are on the edge, and I'd like to make the motion, because I think we'll have dissension on this vote. I moved item 4I to go forward, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second to approve 4I. Do you need a roll call vote in this? Okay, any discussion? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mr. Clark.
Thanks. I know this motion is going to pass, and I'm going to vote for it. I'm just asking that the neighbors stay engaged, and the question I raised perhaps be followed up during the city planning process.
Thank you.
I had one more thing.
Yes, Ms. Rubalcaba?
Which was, I appreciate the history. I'm just in the here and now, and I'm hearing the concerns. My question also would be, was a roundabout the only study that was done? And was there any other studies, stop signs? Like I said, I'm here now. Haven't been here all the years before. And again, just want to encourage the residents to continue to stay engaged.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there is the other Ruvalcaba in back, our transportation engineer, and he could, he could answer that. And I also wanted to point him out for residents, because the Montecito, the MBAR and the Montecito Planning Commission still have just design jurisdiction on this. And if residents engage, look, I know some of you don't want it to happen, but if you engage to the perspective of the best design possible, especially on lighting, Mr. Ruvalcaba and Ms. Do you say Lowe or Lowy? Lowe would be the right people to talk to, our Caltrans representative and our city or our county engineer on that roundabout. So I hope you'll avail yourselves of speaking with them either today or at another time.
Thank you. Those in favor? Say
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Abstention? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent calendar. Mr. Williams, I understand you need to recuse yourself from 4E? Okay. Do I have a motion on the rest of the consent calendar?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do 4E, I'm sorry. Yeah, do 4E first.
I move 4E.
Okay, is there a second? Second. It's a motion and a second. Any discussion on 4E? Hearing none, you don't, well, we don't have to do a roll call. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. Now we can do the balance of the consent calendar. We had a motion and we had a second on that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you all for coming here today, giving your opinions so that we are able to hear them. Item number 5. Ms. Contreras, can you read item 5?
Item 5, Airport Land Use Compatibility Plans. 5A, after consideration of the proposed final negative declaration, together with the initial study and any comments received during the public review process, and on the basis of the whole record, 5A1, make the required CEQA findings as included in Attachment 1 of the staff report, and 5A2, adopt the final negative declaration included as Attachment 2 of the staff report. 5B, adopt Resolution 1936, adopting the 2019 Lompoc Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, ALUCP. 5C, adopt Resolution 1937, adopting the 2019 Nukoyama ALUCP. 5D, adopt Resolution 1938, adopting the 2019 Santa Maria ALUCP. 5E, adopt Resolution 1939, adopting the 2019 San Ynez ALUCP. 5F, adopt Resolution 1940, adopting the 2019 Vandenberg ALUCP. 5G, adopt Resolution 1941, adopting the 2019 Santa Barbara Municipal ALUCP. 5H, authorize the Executive Director to submit the adopted resolutions and ALUCPs to the California Department of Transportation Division of Aeronautics. Or 5I, continue items 5A through 5H to a future meeting for consideration.
And the staff report is to be made by Michael Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Directors. The draft airport land use compatibility plans for the 6 airports in Santa Barbara County, as well as the associated negative declaration, are agendized for adoption. We've also provided an option for the board to continue these items to a future date. Yesterday, we provided a memorandum to the board regarding this item, and to allow staff time to work with the community and local agencies, we recommend a continuance of this item to a future date.
Thank you. Director Lavanino?
Madam Chair, based on the input that I think we've all received, I would make a motion to continue this item and direct staff to continue working with the community.
Ms. Muvakava made a second. Any discussion?
Well, I believe you still need to do public comment.
Only on
the
the continuance.
Yeah.
So can't really speak to the issue, but just, well, let's leave it to the lawyer.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that's correct. You do need to take public comment, but you can limit it to the continuance.
Leave it to the continuance. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Becker. So, did anyone that was going to speak at public comment want to speak only on the continuance?
Board members, Madam Chair, my name is Francisco Chacon, and I'm here to talk about the continuances of this ALUP. And just want to say that there's a group that has a unique role here in the county, and as a result, it serves as an integrator of city, county, and other stakeholder interests in the region, a focus for the resolution of common issues. Over the years, its role has expanded to address a range of issues requiring consensus building intended to improve the quality of life in the region. We want to improve the quality of life in the region. That same organization states to protect public health, safety, and welfare by ensuring the orderly expansion of airports and the adoption of land use measures that minimize the public's exposure to excessive noise and safety hazards. Minimize the public's exposure to excessive noise and safety hazards within areas around public airports to the extent that these areas are not already devoted to incompatible uses. That's yours. This is straight out of your SBCAG strategic plan and also the draft.
Mr. Chacon, all we're speaking on now is on the continuance.
Yes,
So,
that's the point. I would like to point out that if you continue this is what you should be considering.
Thank you.
And also to involve the public, because already it's been mentioned here that we need public input. We need to be involved, and we do. You know,
Okay.
this is our airport. We need to take care of that.
okay, thank you very much.
I can't finish that?
You can finish, but you're speaking on the issue rather than on the issue of the continuance, and that's
Well, I'm
where it's-
kind of speaking on the issue of how to continue it and to notify people, get people, because there's no way for people to know when these meetings are happening. I mean, you pull a building permit and you get notified that something's happening in your area. This thing happens and we don't know, so we want to be involved.
Thank
we
you.
want to take care of our airport.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Collins from Brownstein. I represent Deckers, the Tobes Group, Investec, Giordano's, John Lund, John Price, Mark Linehan, and we just want to thank you as staff for the recommendation. We support it, and we look forward to working with you and staff on a resolution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Fort with Suzanne Ellich Planning and Permitting. Representing my client, the Tobes Group, I'm acting as their agent for the Heritage Ridge project, which is proposed in the city of Goleta. Thank you for consideration of the comments, and we would support the continuation if indeed it's going to lead to additional outreach and deliberate coordination with stakeholders such as us. And we look forward to working with staff on these next steps and being involved with that process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who filled out a speaker slip would like to speak on the continuance? Okay, and you are, Mr. Your man? Leanne Palmer, got it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As the gentleman just stated to us when he read the quote from your report, we're minimizing the public's exposure to excessive noise and safety hazards within areas around public airports to the extent that these areas are not already devoted to incompatible uses. My house on La Patera was built in 1960. Our school was, I believe, built in 1962. So we were there long before any of these rules. But the confusing part of all of this, there is no clarity as a homeowner. As a homeowner in these neighborhoods, and also I'm talking under the main runway, as well as business owners such as Deckers, Target, Raytheon, there's no clarity if something happens to our property. If a plane crashes into it, will we be allowed to rebuild? If it burns down, we were told conflicting information at the meeting. If it was a disaster, you could rebuild. If it wasn't a disaster, you can't rebuild. I'm waiting to see what our insurance companies think of this, because there will be consequences for homeowners that this is out there. Are my insurance rates going to double, or are they going to cancel my fire insurance? Because I'm under a flight path that my house has been under since 1960. Furthermore, we have many parcels that are empty that are now being potentially told they cannot build. Is anybody going to mitigate for these parcel owners? Has anybody thought about the consequences? I spoke to Mayor Perotti last week, and I mentioned to her there was an area I'm sure some of you know about in Southern California where Caltrans tried for 40 years to put a freeway through. It still hasn't happened. Caltrans has finally given up on the project. The point is, we as property owners were mailed a postcard on August 27th. That was the postmark date for a meeting on September 3rd, and then a second meeting today. and that's all the notice we got, that could potentially change the property of multiple employees, employers, homeowners, as well as a school. So I urge you to consider all the ramifications of this plan, because this is a huge thing. And once again, the people who live in Goleta, who live with the noise, who live with the air traffic, and we know that, we're going to be the ones that are going to suffer if this goes through. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, can you speak to how you do the outreach? For the continuance.
For the continuance, there is no outreach directly associated with continuing this item. Through the process, should we open it up to? Okay, so through the process.
Well, it was on the agenda,
Yeah.
so it was properly noticed that you have an option to continue this item. So the public notice was a week prior to this meeting, that you have adequate notice to take this action.
Thank you. Ms. Van Mullen?
Madam Chair, just so I'm understanding your question, is your question whether it was agendized for continuance? Because you do on the agenda have two options.
Yes.
And that was adequately noticed in compliance with the Brown
Okay,
Act.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any further discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Ms. Parati?
Will there, I guess I have a question. What I'm hearing from Ms. Palmer is the outreach to moving forward. I'm fully confident that the city can work with the SBCAG, and we're going to get some solutions here, and I really appreciate moving forward with that if that's adopted today. And putting it on hold, it's just not ready for prime time, as I would call it, and there's a lot of concerns. But how do we, will there be an public outreach moving forward, I guess is my question.
Sure, Mayor Perotti, as we go through this process, I think your Community Development Director and I, we've agreed that at a bare minimum, we'll go back to Goleta City Council whenever we are ready, and we'll also come back to the SBCAG board as an information item, which would allow additional public comment. As we go through this, affected properties were noticed. We received a notice related to the CEQA, but you know, the airport influence area essentially covers the entirety of the city of Goleta, and we don't specifically reach out to them other than the fact for the properties that are directly affected through this process. And we've had a little an issue to work out related to the potential for non-conforming uses. We believe, I think there's been a little bit of disagreement where the law tells us we don't have authority over existing land uses, and yet some of the comments were directed at us related to existing land uses, so we need to figure those out. But I think in the end, if we end up with a plan, we're going to end up with a plan that everybody can agree with. It's not in my interest to try and get something across this finish line that's not supported by the cities that's going to impact. So we will be working it through city staff, and we'll be back to Goleta City Council in the future too.
Okay, I think what happened that Ms. Palmer was referring to is the city did send out a notice to the areas that would be affected, and but we didn't know exactly. It was a crunch on time, and so yes, it was really a quick turnaround on the 27th, and then having the meeting on the 3rd. But it was because of the timeline of the grant, and kind of we were pushed up against a deadline. So that's why I would hope moving forward that we could give those folks that are very interested in and concerned about the effects that they will have on their business or their resident a good amount of time moving forward, that we can let them know when we'll be discussing it again publicly.
And Director Prodi, I think one of the benefits of today, if this is continued, is we remove the pressure that we had from Caltrans. That enables us to work as jurisdictions and SBCAG together going forward without Caltrans pushing us along the way.
Right, and I think this board may know that on Tuesday, the city council unanimously made a decision to make it a little easier if the funding is a stumbling block, that we will approve the difference that the Caltrans grant up to $51,000. We're hearing different amounts. We're hearing it could possibly be $14,000.
Yes,
But we did make
understand.
that motion, so that will help.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Director Murillo?
Madam Chair, I'll be voting for the motion, and I'd like to thank the City of Goleta for taking that action on Tuesday to relieve the issue of the grant monies, and thank you for being a gracious neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. So you made the motion?
Madam Chair?
It was Lavanino made it, and...
Lavanino made it. Yes.
Excuse me, I got a late speaker slip from Mr. Don Loomer. I wasn't sure if he wanted to speak on the continuance or, okay, he wanted to speak on the continuance.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. We just learned about it, the implications of this. I'm the president of the Rancho Goleta Mobile Home Association, which is down on the end of Ward Drive. We are just north of the flight plan going out of the airport. And we just heard about it, and I would just ask you to postpone it to give us a chance to figure out what's going on, because over the last 2 months, I knew some pilots, I lived up in the Sacramento area, I knew some pilots that flew in and out of Santa Barbara and knew that they had some regulations about where they could fly to avoid the areas of population. But apparently they've changed that, because all of the flight pattern, most of it used to take off going west. Now it takes off coming east. And in the morning, this morning, for example, starting at 5 o'clock this morning, there were 9 flights out by 8 o'clock. And they're not just coming out on the normal flight pattern, they're coming out now and flying directly over the whole mobile home park. Not only airplanes, but helicopters that are coming in at a very low altitude all the times through the day. So we would just like a chance to find out what's going on. And is there any way that we can say something? Because according to the plan that I read when I was out at the council meeting, about 1/4, we have 200 units in our mobile home park, and about 50 of those are up for question. I don't know what that means. Nobody explained to me what that means, because that could possibly mean that they have to close those down. We don't know that. So I would just like a little time to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you have any other slips? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Yes,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Clark?
I own a house in Goleta, and I'm not sure if it's on the new flight pattern or not. So until I check that out, I better recuse myself and leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even wait for you to leave. Abstention? Okay, motion carries. Ms. Contreras, can you please read item number 6 into the record?
Item 6, Senate Bill 375, Sustainable Community Strategy Public Participation Plan. 6A, review and approve the draft public participation plan describing a process to be undertaken by SBCAG staff and consistent with the process undertaken in the previous RTP SCS update cycle, or 6B. 6B1, review and approve the draft public participation plan describing a process to be undertaken by SBCAG staff redesigned from the previous RTP SCS update cycle to include community listening sessions and a web-based means of public participation. And 6B2, adopt Resolution 1933, amending the fiscal year 2019-20 overall work program and budget to adjust work elements to reduce the need for consulting services and to shift staffing resources to reflect actual work effort as reflected in attachments E, F, and G. And 6B3, approve and authorize the Executive Director Margie Kern to execute this amendment to the OWP and budget. Or 6C1, review and approve the draft public participation plan describing the process to be taken by SBCAG staff and the Community Environmental Council. 6C2, approve and authorize the chair to execute an agreement between the Community Environmental Council and SBCAG for public outreach services associated with the Sustainable Community Strategy update in an amount not to exceed $75,000 with a term to commence upon SBCAG's issuance of a notice to proceed through August 31st, 2021. And 6C3, approve and authorize the executive director to extend the period of performance by up to 1 additional year in accordance with Section 4 of the agreement.
Thank you. And here to give the staff report is Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Chair and Directors. So there was the challenge, Terry. I do apologize. As directed, staff brings this item. Whoa. All right, 3 minutes on the clock.
I was leaving.
No, it was, okay. Staff brings this item to provide options to the boards, for the board's consideration related to the public process that will be conducted for the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy update. Staff is returning with 3 variations of the process for the board's consideration. I'd like to note that Senate Bill 375 provides several requirements, and the final 2 phases of the process respond to these requirements of the law and are nearly identical, so I'll be focusing on the early part of the public process in my discussion. In the early part, there is more flexibility in how it's conducted. So we're returning with 3 options, and as directed, the first one, option A, is simply a repeat of the process that we undertook 4 years ago. That would be carried out by staff, and staff would seek to engage and meet with the region's various special interest groups. In the previous cycle, we attempted to engage about 40, and we were successful in meeting with about 30 separate groups. The second option, option B, is another option to be carried out by staff. For the early phase, staff would organize and conduct 6 listening sessions throughout the region. Additionally, we would employ a web-based means for public participation, which would complement both that initial phase as well as the 2 public workshops that occur halfway through. And finally, option C. Option C is slightly revised of what we were proposing before during the board's July meeting. This option is the one we would employ consultant services through the Community Environmental Council. And the only difference between now and when this was brought to you in July is the involvement of cause is no longer. During its September 5th meeting, the Joint Technical Advisory Committee voted 14-2 to recommend the board approve option C. And as the person who would oversee the execution of this process, I do ask that, I want to voice that I do not support option A. So I'm happy to take any questions, and Cameron Gray of the Environmental Council is here and can also take questions related to option C.
Any questions of Mr. Becker? Okay. Ms. Perotti?
Excuse me, Mr. Becker, you said that the outreach last time you did this, staff was trying to get 40, and then you only were able to capture 30. Do you think that you didn't have the manpower, the time? What was the cause of the outreach not being exactly what you wanted or even more?
Director Perotti, that's a good question. So for this, we essentially try and invite ourselves to a meeting of these various groups. And sometimes they don't respond to us, sometimes they say they're not interested. And that's ultimately why we don't get as many as we try to get. So we attempted to engage about 40, and we're successful with meeting with about 30 of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Hartman?
And I did have a question for Mr. Gray. My personal experience has been that government does many things well, but reaching deep into communities, not necessarily so much. So I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Gray, about CEC's work. I've worked in the Valley on Solarize Santa Ynez, but I know that you're there for electric car shows and a whole range of activities working with community organizations. So could you summarize some of that work?
Chair Patino and Supervisor Hartman, thank you for that question. We do a lot of outreach and engagement activities across Santa Barbara County. We just held a green car show in Solvang this past weekend, and we will be doing more of those events in the coming year. We have a solarized program, as you mentioned, that helps homeowners put solar on their rooftops. And we also are very woven into a number of different networks. So we have a budding climate justice network that is in development, and that includes several organizations with representation in the North County and the South County of Santa Barbara, including the Mixteco Indigeno Community Organizing Project. So they are newer to the North County, but they are very connected with the immigrant communities, and we think that we could work with them to bring those voices more into the conversation. And that really is our intention with this, is to use those networks, those relationships that we have, and the community base that we have to help bring more voices into this process through democratic participation. So all voices are welcome. This is absolutely in line with our mission, and we would love to do the work if the board is supportive.
And just carbon farming and work with the RCD and ranchers and farmers, I think that's also important.
Yes.
And that's not something that this organization has particular reach into.
Forgive me, I work on our transportation programs. I don't work on our food programs. But yes, I am remiss in not mentioning that we have worked extensively with a number of ranchers and farms in the North County on carbon farming. Yes.
Any questions? Yep. Director Murillo?
So, Mr. Becker, so you're saying that the technical committees are recommending option C as listed here?
Yes,
Okay.
Director Murillo, the Joint Technical Advisory Committee, which is a combination of both the technical transportation as well as the technical planning advisory committee. So you have public works staffs and the planning staffs together. And the purpose of that committee is to hear items related to the regional transportation plan. They voted 14-2 to support option C. I will say it was the two members of the city of Santa Barbara that were the two. But,
Okay, and cause was excluded because they have a political action committee
cause was excluded
function?
In order to gain support of the board. That was one of the primary hangups that we took from the July meeting. So we refashioned the scope of work, which is slightly the same work is going to get done. It's just not going to get done by cause.
Understood. Okay. I'll be in support of it. I'm not sure if we have public comment, but thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Public comment? No public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, I'll bring this back to the board. Any further discussion or motion?
Move option C.
So motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Becker. So
I get to go stay. I'll just stay put.
Hello, Mr. Becker.
Item 7, Housing Planning and Production Grants Program. 7A, receive an update on Housing Planning and Production Grants Program funding opportunities. 7B, nominate and appoint one SBCAG director representing the County Board of Supervisors to serve on the Central Coast Mega Region Working Group. 7C, affirm SBCAG support for the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments to serve as the Central Coast Mega Region Fiscal Agent.
And there's Mr. Becker to give our staff report.
Thank you, Chair and Directors again. This item is a continuation of an item that we brought to you during your July meeting regarding the Housing Planning and Production Grant Program. The difference between then and now is the governor has signed the budget trailer bill and is no longer speculative. Santa Barbara County has been grouped into a Central Coast mega region that includes Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Benito, and San Luis Obispo counties. Each of these counties is required to provide 3 representatives to serve on a working group that guides the distribution and potentially the priorities for the use of the available funds in this program. 1 representative is required to represent the county, a Board of Supervisors member, and we are also required to have city council representation from a small city and also from a large city. We are in the process of coordinating for a city selection committee meeting to occur on October 17th to appoint the 2 city council representatives. Today, we are asking the board to appoint the county representative. Involvement in this working group will likely require participation in approximately 3 meetings over the course of the next year, and meetings will likely be conducted in Paso Robles. As a reminder, the program will provide $8.5 million to the mega region for projects that seek to improve housing production. Assuming a population-based distribution, the SBCAG region can expect roughly $2.5 million. And though he's not here today, we do understand Supervisor Hart has expressed a willingness to serve. If there was nobody else who was interested in serving, I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Did you say there is? Or
There is no public
there is
comment.
no public comment. Okay. So bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion. Director Williams?
I'd be happy to nominate Director Hart in this capacity.
Second.
Okay. Director Hart has been nominated and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Do we need an action on the
Do we need action?
on C?
So
Or the
moved.
Third part. To support the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments to serve as the fiscal agent.
Okay. Ms. Van Mullen?
Madam Chair, what I'm hearing from Mr. Becker is that we'd like a vote on the item
C.
C as well.
Okay.
Move item C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second, item C. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Mr. Adam, Director Adam is abstaining. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 1-minute reports from the board members. And shall we start with you, Mr. Lavanino? Director Waite?
Yes, well, I'd like to report that our board made a decision to allow our city manager to resign after a little more than 5 months into his term as our manager. We have not yet put out an RFP. We do have our finance director currently acting as our city manager. I'll be meeting with her tomorrow morning at 9. We have hired full-time now our interim city manager, Chip Woolbrandt, to represent the city of Solvang from Price, Postel, and Parma. That is what I have. My report is going to stop at that. Thank you.
Director Mosby? Director Perotti?
Yes, I'd like to report real quickly on the success of our multi-agency cleanup that we had a few weeks ago, and it was several organizations that was through the Union Pacific Railroad corridor. It started on the western end by Bacara and went all the way to Patterson. There was the Goleta City Public Works was involved, the sheriffs, the behavioral wellness, police, CHP, Union Pacific. It was a Caltrans. It was great effort by Caltrans. They tremendous support. They gave us 20 to 30. They sent in 20 to 30, a crew of 20 or 30 workers. I took 4 months to put this project together, and it took 4 days to complete. It was Monday through Thursday. Marburg was instrumental as well, providing 13 roll-off bins, and over 520 cubic yards of trash were picked up. And we have police walking that area weekly, patrols for just to keep it up, and it's not so much about really trying to get the homeless to move, but really educating them on the fact that it's extremely dangerous to be so close to the railroad. You know, if you've ever been at our depot and have one of the trains go by, they're really whizzing, they're really going really fast, so it's not a safe place for them to be. So we have a task force, and they're meeting again in October, and SBCAG has been invited to attend our task force. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Director Hartman?
Thank you. I'm here to ask for everyone on this board's assistance. I serve on the board of the Fire Safe Council, and that includes our county fire. It includes EOC. It includes the Bucket Brigade, and representatives from various communities throughout the county. And the goal is to reduce risks and threats to community and increase resilience. And we know from emergencies such as fires and potential earthquakes, but we're also now facing power shutoffs and trying to figure out how we integrate various neighborhoods and communities throughout the county into a communication network and also educational programs. So in the past, things like CERT training have been catch and release, but I think Abe Powell of the Bucket Brigade says what we really need to do is catch and keep. And I need help defining and identifying the various neighborhood associations and homeowner associations that are geographically based so that we can create this network to be a more resilient county. This is, I think, a very high priority, and I've done the best I can in my district, but I'd like others to help me out. And so somebody from my office will be contacting, but I hope all of you have I'm sure you already have a good sense, but if you could formalize it, I could, ideally the name, the general area, and if you know a contact person and contact information. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams.
Well, one of those concerns that Supervisor Hartman just mentioned will be featured tonight at Montecito Union School. We are having a meeting where SEE is going to present the PSPS program. It has been I think our intention in our office to try to encourage Southern California Edison and PG&E particularly to have the capability to inspect lines and the staffing to inspect lines rapidly after an event, so that we avoid the situation of multiple day shutdowns, because the weather patterns typically are not multiple days, meaning sundowners are intermittent. They come up in the afternoon, they fall down in the middle of the night, and if there's sufficient staffing, we could avoid the situation where there's 12-hour or multiple day shutoffs that could endanger the lives of people who don't have need power for basic living, and endanger our transportation networks, given that the battery power on our railroad crossings are only about 10 hours long. So we have a threat here that we hope to convince them to deal with appropriately.
Sure, Director Hartman. Thank you. We have a similar meeting coming up on Monday at the Los Olivos School, and we've been talking about this because in our area, the San Ynez Valley, if we lose power, it's certainly medical equipment, but it's also cooling centers if we get multiple days. And we have PG&E, which, as I understand, is somewhat more vulnerable. So we've been working on this, but another thing we need to be identifying community by community is where there are generators, who has that ability. If people have medical needs, all they're going to get from the utilities at this point is advance notice. So where are they going to go? What kind of transportation? And so we have to be putting together a sense of what our resources are. So we're hoping to use our meeting Monday in the San Ynez Valley to launch that, see what we have and what more we need. I think it's 4, but let me get back to that. Sorry.
Okay, Director Rubalcaba.
Yes, we actually are working on a resiliency plan. So I know Alma works out of your office, so she will maybe connect with her so she can. Okay, good. Yeah. So we have that. So we're real excited about that. On September 29th, we are going to have a forum or outreach regarding the resiliency at the Guadalupe Senior Center at 12:30. I believe it's a Sunday, so we're going to have some food and stuff like that to reach out to the residents and hopefully get input regarding our resiliency plan. We're working on our general plan update. I know a lot of our cities have been doing that, so we're finally working on ours. And that's it.
Thank you. Director Adam?
Well, I'm just going to say how inappropriate I find this whole power shutdown strategy, and the fact that we're so comfortable engineering ways around it and accommodating the power companies and whoever ends up with our grid at some point. I see the potential for the power companies to back out of the management of the grid at some point, and then whoever ends up with it, probably us, should harden the grid. Don't tell me to get along without power. Harden the damn grid. I don't understand this philosophy, and I find it totally unacceptable. And I think the public should too. And the fact that we're just worrying about people that have medical emergencies, that's the tip of the iceberg. You know, everybody else has a refrigerator full of food. Everybody else, pardon me?
And farmers irrigation.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to go there. So.
Madam Chair, members of the board.
Yes.
I just want to do a Brown Act reminder. So this item is agendized for 1-minute reports on the board's activities.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of interest in the PSPS, but we're not agendized to discuss that.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'll stop discussing it. But suffice it to say that I'm disgusted about the whole thing.
We'll make note of that, Director Adam. Director Murillo.
Thank you so much. The City of Santa Barbara is interviewing 3 bike share operators today, and we're hoping to make a decision within the month. Not sure when we'll be rolling that out, so we'll be doing a bike share program. Real proud of that. We continue to spend our Measure C monies. That's our 1-cent sales tax for road and sidewalk repair and for our police station. Our roads are a little torn up and people are waving their fist at the city, but when it's all done, beautiful sidewalks and curbs, it's going to be really nice. And on the subject of our police station, we have taken the step of finding a preferred location, which is our Coda commuter lot, and we had some bumps in the road because it's the location of our Saturday morning farmers market. And so this was just Tuesday. We were so sad, and we have to work with the farmers market to relocate, that we left the meeting, worried about that. And now I'm just like, yes, we have a good location for a new police station, which is huge for us. We've needed a new one for a really long time, and our police officers deserve a good place to work and be safe and make us safe. So there's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sierra.
Thank you very much. Just a couple. First of all, I'd like to thank Caltrans for the median, our first and going westbound. We have a new median on 246 at La Lata that Caltrans installed, and I would like to thank you. And I don't know how appropriate the venue is here, but we recently had a fire, the McMurray fire, up in our community, and our firefighters, first responders, it was amazing how quickly they responded and how precise they were. You'd go to the 7 a.m. meetings, and it was like a military operation. I was so impressed. I'm sure Caltrans had something to do with that too. I just wanted to thank everybody involved in handling our fire so quickly.
Thank you. Director Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing to report that's relevant to the purview of SBCAG, and I'd like to thank County Council for her intervention strategy recently implemented.
Thank you. I know I've really needed you today, Ms. Van Mullen. In the city of Santa Maria, we've held one town hall meeting. We're doing it in quadrants on the northeast side of town, and so we've had all of our department heads there and people coming. We had a general meeting, and we talked about issues, and then they were able to contact all the department heads as the department heads were located inside the room with their issues. And there wasn't anything that really came up. It's usually the traffic that is really important, and people talk about the homeless, but a lot of different issues. We are in the midst of doing our slurry and chip seal, so I will be coming back to you and bragging again about our pavement index being the highest in the county. And October 8th, we'll be having another town hall meeting on the northwest side of town. And Executive Director's report. Ms. Kern?
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you so much. I just want to report that we had a very well-attended workshop last week for the Santa Ynez Traffic and Safety Study. Whatever you did, you got the people out, and we appreciate it. We had to bring in more chairs. I think over 100 people showed up, so that was pretty amazing. So thank you, and great public input. Really appreciate that. Also, following up on our train outreach, we had lunch and learns last month, and then this past week we also did train appreciation days, or rider appreciation days. So we had staff not only from Traffic Solutions and our other SBCAG staff, but we also had Ventura County Transportation Commission staff out at the train stations, thanking the train riders. They got a free voucher for a meal on the train, so they got down to the cafe car and experienced that. And then we also welcomed our new riders from our lunch and learn. So it was a dual purpose of being ambassadors, of getting new people on the train. Sarkis Kachak, who loves to attend these meetings every single month, is really disappointed he missed this meeting. He's at the California Transportation Commission workshops today on the SB1's congested corridors and trade corridors. The second funding is coming up, and we want to be at the front seat of learning how to apply for the next phase of funding, because we want to be first in line, and we have our fingers crossed on that. So you'll hear more about that in the next month or so. And last but not least, we are submitting our TIFIA letter of interest. This is the loan that we talked about a month or so ago. So once we do that letter of interest, the Build America Bureau has about 1 month or so, maybe it's 45 days, to review that, and they'll get back to us whether or not we're eligible. Then that will come back to the board as well for your consideration if we want to go for a TIFIA loan or basically a commercial bond and in financing the 101 cash flow needs that we're going to need in the next year or so. So that's my report, and I want to thank the board for enduring this fun meeting that we had today.
Thank you. The Caltrans District Director's Report, Ms. Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I would like to announce is that Caltrans has a new director. Our new director is Tokes Amishakin. He comes to us from Tennessee. He has a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Jackson State University, and he will start officially in mid-October. We're very excited to have him along. He is have him newly at the helm. He is a champion for active transportation and healthy communities, and he will be joined his compadre, or his next in line, I'll say the new Chief Deputy Director at Caltrans is Jim Davis. And Jim Davis has been with Caltrans for over 20 years. He's served in a number of roles with increasing levels of responsibility. He is a professional engineer, and he's been part of the project management and delivery side of the house. He also did he took a turn at the helm and the deputy director role for planning as well. So I think we have a great leadership team coming in as appointed by the new governor. I would like to announce the opportunity to apply for sustainable transportation planning grants is open. We have an open solicitation for proposals through October 11th. We held a workshop at our offices on September 12th, and I know that several of your entities had staff there. We had a very well-attended workshop, and this is a program that we really enjoy. Caltrans has over $300 million in value actively that are of active transportation planning grants currently. That doesn't include the completed ones, and now we have a new round open. This is the opportunity for communities to come together and do their own planning that helps them become competitive for investments further on. And we are tracking these in terms of success, right? So the Santa Ynez Valley Circulation Study is an example of one of those planning grants, and there are several here that are active. So we're proud of that program, and we look forward to seeing more great ideas come from this region. And then just two items related to some of this topics that came up today. I would like to announce it's Roundabout Week. It really is. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. The Federal Highway Administration has designated September 16th to 20th as Roundabout Week.
You were waiting to say that for the whole meeting, weren't you?
I have been waiting. Yeah.
Didn't you just want to jump up while we were all talking about it and go, it's roundabout week?
It's roundabout week. I really wanted to say. After today's meeting, I'd be happy to share some information that's come through through your executive director, information about various aspects of roundabouts and how they do serve to provide for a safer environment all around and contribute to safety. And I will say that we've had similar conversations as to what we heard earlier today in other parts around District 5. So I know Tim Gubbins will be happy to know that there's been a lot of passionate activity around roundabouts here. It's natural when we introduce new concepts. We are seeing tremendous success. The Federal Highway Administration is seeing success around the United States with roundabouts. So it's certainly doesn't fit everywhere. We know that. There's certain things to make something fit well into the environment takes a lot of engineering and careful evaluation. So we do appreciate the dialogue and the assurance that we are building an environment that is safe for all users, for pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles, and large trucks as well. So, and then finally, I want to say also that Caltrans looks forward to continuing our work with SBCAG on the airport land use compatibility planning. I want to say that airports, as you know, are a very vital component of the state's transportation system. And the way that state law is set up, it is for the regions to come together on determining what compatible land uses are around their airports. So this friendly neighbor environment is very, very critical. And Caltrans is here to provide technical assistance, as we did with the grant, and as we have experts in our aeronautics division, and we provide guidance for how compatibility planning can work. And really, of course, I think it goes without saying, it comes down to livable communities, as was pointed out. Noise and safety is very basic, but having an airport, having a vital regional airport in your area does require an extra level of effort and responsibility that we all take very seriously. And so we look forward to continuing that partnership and working with you on that as well. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? I notice roundabouts really do pique people's interest. We get a great amount of people that want to come and talk about it, and they're very passionate. I just wondered if you even had the amount of hours that have been spent talking about roundabouts in Santa Barbara County. I know 166 has been very, very lively. Okay, committee meetings. Have we decided if Mr. Julian is going to be the Calvans board rep or not? He still is. Okay, and then you have the report then, or not? You don't have the report. Okay. You have the report? Okay. Sure.
Communication approximately 14 representatives from the different regions throughout the state participating or wanting to participate in Calvans authority to discuss agenda items scheduled for today's copy of the agenda and backup copies will be available. I ask that a consent item be pulled for discussion, which is item number 3, establish and fill additional positions. Specifically, there was a request to add 1 additional staff member to reach the Santa Maria and Monterey area because the increased activities and anticipated year-round use of vans. Consent items passed, significant highlights, and the mean are noted below. Bids for 270 GMX XL hybrid 15-passenger vans. Resolution to seek the application for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. I'll just give you the highlights first. And the upcoming meetings listed October 10th, November 14th, December 12th, January 9th as needed. And then the surplus of vans. And that's it.
Thank you. The Coast Rail Coordinating Council Policy Committee meeting.
Thank you,
Director
Madam
Maria.
Chair. We had a teleconference, very convenient, just did it by phone, our last one, and the topics were that Pete Rogers with the San Luis Obispo County Association of Governments had a good meeting with high-level Union Pacific folks in Omaha. And so we're looking for more cooperation there. We had an update from LoSAN on the San Luis Obispo layover facility, and an update from SLOCOG staff on the State Rail Assistance Award for planning in the Coast Rail corridor. And we're planning to have one more meeting before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Maria. Any communications? None at all? And okay, so that we'll adjourn this meeting till Thursday, October 17th, to begin at 10 o'clock in Santa Maria. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.